Hey, welcome to another episode of Becoming a TechnoWizard. It's about to be straight interlude in here, all right? Like, straight interlude, but it's part of the series. So, just finished watching the final episode of DEVS, finally. And that joint was crazy, bro. Like, the ending like had me going, right? Like the last couple episodes, oh my gosh, that's a good series. That's a good series. At first, I was not feeling it too much. Like I was kind of annoyed and frustrated and just like bored. Like first couple episodes are so slow and annoying and just like slow going. Man, I was just like, ugh. And I personally don't even like the whole determinism thing because it just doesn't really make sense. Well, it makes some kind of sense, but I feel like one of the comments I read I started watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos about it. One of the comments I read said it very accurately in that determinism, though it's an interesting idea and it sounds like it could be accurate, it's unfalsifiable. So it's not really a good scientific principle. It's not science, it's more like a type of religion, a type of just conceptual or philosophy or something like that. Um, there are a number of things like that, like the idea of God, the idea of souls and all this stuff. These are ideas that are patently like impossible to test. Like you can't prove them, but you also can't disprove them. Therefore, it's like you can't really consider those ideas, even if they are like useful ideas. You can't consider them as useful scientific principles, like as ways to explain the universe, like as ways to, at least not as ways to explain how it works from a practical standpoint. You can't sit there and say like, oh, this idea is we can put this in a scientific principle and make inventions and all this stuff from it. Like, like the idea of God, it may be an interesting idea, whether you believe in God or not, but you can't prove God exists. That's the whole point of God, like to have belief, to have faith. That's the whole point. So you can't prove it. I think determinism is in that same kind of vein, in that it's an interesting concept, but you can't prove determinism exists because it's impossible to gather all the elements, like all the causes of an effect. Like, so I kind of just jumped in here because I've been thinking about this for like the whole day. But okay, let me back up. Devs, for those who don't know, is a series on FX or whatever that that was okay. Okay, devs is basically about tech company who created a powerful quantum computer, and I'm gonna get into spoilers. Like this is all spoilers, so don't even watch this if you don't want spoilers. But okay, yeah, devs is about a tech company who has a quantum computer. It's so powerful that it could basically simulate um, things, like simulate reality and kind of project pa- past and the future of reality, right? That's the whole idea that they're trying to do here. And throughout the series, you have this girl, this woman Lily, and her boyfriend Sergey. Sergey turns out to be a Russian spy, um, kind of like a deep double agent, but he's a Russian spy who went into the company, the tech company. The tech company is called Amaya, who and he's trying to learn about their secrets, right? They have a secretive part of the company called DEVS, the whole show, um, and they're trying to he's trying to figure out what's going on in there and get information back. So he eventually gets into the DEVS part of the company, um, and he figures out what's going on in there. And like I said, they're creating a quantum computer that can predict the future and the past, that can project a reality that predicts the future and the past. All right. So he sees this and he tries to get the information out, but he's killed. And they cover up his death and stage as a suicide. So the girlfriend, Lily, she also works at Amaya, and she's not having it. She's like, no way, he didn't kill himself. And she figured out, he didn't. She looped in her friend Jamie, her ex-boyfriend Jamie, and they figured it out together. Blah blah blah. One of the chief security guard, I forgot his name, but I think Michael, I don't know, chief security guard. He goes after them and all this other stuff. But the company was started because the CEO, Forrest lost his child and his whole family, his child and his wife, one day. The whole like thing, the whole during like the whole like first episodes, 5 out of 8 episodes, you don't really know how he lost his kid. They don't even explain it too often. They just it's obvious that he lost his kid. It's really good storytelling that way. That they don't outright explain things. There's not a whole lot of exposition. It's all like context, contextual kind of just context and all that stuff. Is really he's really good for that. Um, but yeah, he lost his child and all that. So you kind of get the idea that he's trying to like they don't say what his goal is, but you can kind of get the idea that he's trying to you know get his daughter back somehow with this quantum computer, with this DEVS company type of thing. Um, so throughout the series, you're trying to figure out what his end game is, how this quantum computer works, what it allows them to do, all this stuff. And each episode, kind of, you see them getting better and better with the technology. At first, they can't really see very much. Like they have this visualization room. It's like a huge screen, and it's projecting what the simulation, what the quantum computer simulation is telling them, right? Is kind of coming up for them, and so they can see through this visualization room. Um, During the first like 4 or 5 episodes, it's just like really grainy, right? Like you can barely see anything. The best they get to is like a grainy, staticky, black and white, no sound, kind of visualization of Christ, Jesus Christ on the cross, right? And they do a couple other kind of things like that. Like you can see the Salem witch trials, somebody get burned up. You can see his daughter. He tries to see his daughter through the machine, and a couple other things that you can see, right? But for most of the time, it's very grainy. And so turns out they were using a principle called determinism, where determinism is the idea that everything has a cause, everything happens for a reason, not because of a plan per se, but every effect has a cause. And if you know the cause, if you know all the causes, then you can predict the effect. You can predict what will happen. So for instance, this whole when you get into this idea, you start to get into the idea of free will, because if the world is deterministic, technically that means you don't have any free will, because everything you do is just an effect of a number of causes that happened before, right? So every thought you have, every action you do, it's just effects. It's just you on the tram lines, that they use that concept, that word in the episode in the series a lot too. That you're on a set of tram lines, you're just following the tracks, right? um, and and so this simulation, it works, but they keyed in some type of deterministic equation, principle, or whatever, to make this quantum computer work. But it was so green, like you can barely see anything, you can barely visualize anything. But one of the devs, his name is Lyndon, keyed in the Everett's many worlds principle. And now this is like the only part where they really went into like some exposition. All right. So another part of the devs, the chief devs, is her name is Katie, and she was like it did a flashback to when she was in college, and where Forrest was trying to find devs, find developers or whatever, and he came across Katie, who was in a lecture where the lecturer, the professor, was talking about quantum physics, right? And for people that don't know what quantum physics is, basically the short and sweet of it is that in the quantum world, meaning things super small, like the size of photons, electrons, subatomic particles, and that world, it's the real world, but it's super small, right? You can't see with the naked eye. You need crazy things to see it, but photons, electrons, in these small and this with these small particles in the quantum world, things don't exist in a state of binary. Like it doesn't exist in here and there, right? Photons, exist in a state of what they call wave functions, which basically is like, you might have heard that, particles are or light photons, whatever, are it's a particle and a wave, right? You might have heard that. You might have heard of the double slit experiment. They explain all this in the show, but during that lecture they explain, the double slit experiment. For those who don't know, is like you have, a little bar, it's two slits in it, and a wall at the end. Um, Whenever a photon goes from goes through one of the holes on like this first bar, goes through one of the holes and hits the back wall, it makes it like a mark or whatever, right? You can see where it hit on that wall. If there's two slits, right, that means technically it can only go through one of those two slits. So when it hits the back wall, you should see two lines. You shoot like a photon shoots out, goes through one of those slits and hits, on one of those walls, right? That's what you expect to happen. But this is a real experiment. It's not from the show. This is an actual real experiment. What happens is that when you shoot lasers at these two slits, it wasn't two lines that happens on the wall. It's a whole bar of lines that happens, right? And they was like, whoa, how can this happen? Like, there's only two slits. It should be, two, lines that happens on the wall. But it was it's like 4 or 5, bunch of different things that's happening there. And the quantum physics, the double slit experiment basically says that particles exist as a wave, when and that means that it, like, when it's going through the two slits, is not as going through as a particle. It's not going through as like a little ball that's just like going straight through. It's going through as a ripple, right? So just like in water, if you try this at home, if you like shove some water and you look at the ripple, this is why I want to do this on my computer. I can show it. I'm not gonna do a whole video. Let me just show it. Double slit experiment. But when you hit a ripple and it goes through the two splits, it has a whole bunch of different, things going on. It has a whole bunch, like, you'll see a ripple will come out like that, and then if it goes to the two splits, that ripple will split into different, ripples, and those ripples will, when that hits the wall, that's why you get different events happening there. So let me show y'all what I'm looking at here, so you get a visualization here, because this is super important. Like, this explains the entire show basically. That's why I'm actually going into detail here. So this is the double slit experiment. This is what I'm talking about, right? So you have two, and if it goes through, if it goes through those slits, acts as a ripple, and different things happen. You get these different kind of bars here, right? You can kind of see it here. Now, to explain what this means, it's important to note that, well, I'm not going to get too much into it, but these ripples aren't like water. They're, in the quantum world, they're probabilities. They're chances that, the probability that this photon will be here or here or here or here or here or anywhere along these ripples, right? That's what these are. These ripples are the probability of where and when the photon will be. And when it hits here, that's the probability of, that's how likely that photon was in that area, right? This is real life. Like, real life is stranger than fiction. So basically, the double slit experiment shows that on the quantum scale, there is no here or there. Like, photon is not like just there. It's everywhere. Like, the probability, it exists in a state of probabilities, that it can be here and here and here and here. It has a 50% chance of being here, 60%, 2%, whatever. You have all these probabilities. However, what they also saw in the double slit experiment is when they put an observer there, meaning a thing that measures what's happening, because they try to figure out, okay, why is this happening, right? And they put something there to try to measure the photons and see what's going on. But when they did that, this didn't happen. They got the regular thing where, it went through one bar. went through one bar, like that, or whatever. So they got the regular thing happen where it was either one or the other, like this, right? It was either one or the other. Oops. It was either one or the other. That's what they got when they put a thing there that would measure that would measure the precise location of the photon, so they can see what's going on. It went through one slit or the other. But when there's no measurement there, when no measurement device was there, when no observer was there, it was everywhere. It was a ripple. So that's why we realize now that on the quantum scale, reality exists on the plane of probabilities. Like there's a random kind of chances that things will happen, right? Now, we also had, so to explain this, to kind of ramp this up, we wonder, why don't we see this in our everyday life, right? We wonder, why don't we see the chance of my hand being in multiple places? No, it's only here. I know where my hand is. I can point to it, right? Same thing for larger atoms, like not subatomic particles, but larger ones, like your iron, your oxygen, helium, all those stuff, like building blocks of life. You know, you can point to where these principles are. You can look at it. You can say that's the location of that principle right there. That's the location right there, right? And so, all this to say that there is a schism between what we see on the smallest levels of our reality and what we see on the larger levels of our reality. And back in the 1950s, back in the early 1900s, they were trying to figure this out. It was like, why, are these two different things different? Like this shouldn't there should be there needs to be explanation of why these two different things are different. So a lot of different people had different interpretations of this double slit experiment, of this theory. One of them is the popular one called the Copenhagen theorem, um, in which states that wave functions collapse upon the existence of an observer, meaning that all these probabilities that exist on the small scale, when they come up to the larger scale, they cease to exist as probabilities. It chooses one or the other, right? And this is whole theory of getting all into that. But this other dude, by the name is Everett. I didn't even know about this dude, but he came up with a theory called, he came up with the interpretation of this experiment called the many worlds experiment. I mean, the many worlds interpretation. And that stated, sheesh, man, that stated that there is no breakdown of rules between a quantum world and our world. There is no, magical kind of filter. And I'm saying it like this because he believed that the Copenhagen was just bullcrap. It just didn't make sense. Like he said, you know, he said it just. I was reading it earlier today, but he just said some really bad things about it. It just doesn't make sense. He said, "Oh, the Copenhagen interpretation is hopelessly incomplete because it is a priori, because of its a priori, I don't know how to say that, reliance on classical physics, as well as a philosophic monstrosity with the reality concept for the macroscopic world and denial of the same for the microcosm." So basically, he's saying that the Copenhagen theorem, the theory that the quantum world exists on different set of rules than the real world, in our bigger world, is nonsense. That's what he thought, right? And he said, in his interpretation, which he actually proved to be mathematically consistent, they couldn't actually prove that with the Copenhagen theory. There's a lot of gray area of the math there, even to this day. But he proved that, I mean, not prove, but like his math was more consistent with the interpretation of many worlds, which basically says that our reality is quantum, meaning our reality does not exist in a state of only one thing happening or whatever. It exists in probabilities, but the perception of those probabilities exist in different worlds. So every time you make a choice, every time something could have happened, there's another reality that's split off from ours in which that choice happened, or in which a different effect happened from the same cause, right? So with every random chance, every probability that something can happen, it has happened. It is simply in a different reality. So the reality that we're perceiving is one where we think, we made a choice and this thing happened from it, right? But he's saying that in the many worlds interpretation, yeah, we did make a choice, but there's also another reality where we made a different choice. And so all of that is important because in this whole theory, this whole series, the Dev series explores this whole like argument, this debate, and it explores it from a very emotional standpoint, right? And it's interesting too because throughout the whole series, like most of these characters are super like, I don't want to say bland, but like almost robotic, almost objective feeling. Like they all are very logical, or not necessarily. They all are fairly logical, and they all react in a way that feels less emotional than you would expect in certain situations. Granted, there is a deep sense of sorrow. There's a deep sense of sadness. There's a deep sense of just frustrations and feelings that you get throughout the show. But you get this feeling that it's a little bit muted. That's a little bit like the main characters, right? Like Lily, throughout the whole time, you never see her smile until like the last episode, or like or um the other character, Katie. Another you never see her smile. Like even when crazy things happen, like this, one of her devs, she was like, you create like Lyndon. He put the many worlds theory into the principle, and he was fired, right? Because Forrest, well, I'll get to that in a bit, but basically, he fell off a dam. He fell off the thing and died, and she didn't make. She was cold, bro. She didn't make any reaction. Like the whole time, you just get this feeling that nobody has like sincere, like their emotions aren't displayed on their face, right? And it's kind of trippy to see. But anyways, all that to say that yeah, there's a debate between this idea of determinism and free will. And even though this show is really cool because it explores these super scientific topics, but from a standpoint of a very dramatic, very emotional standpoint. And the whole series is there because Forrest lost his child, and it even said it like halfway through. It said Amaya, I'm not Amaya, but DEVS, like this machine that he's building, he's putting himself on trial. That's like almost the exact phrase they used, where Forrest is trying to see if he's guilty of his child's death. Because in a deterministic world where everything happens for a reason, where you have an effect that was meant from a different cause, where you going along a set of tram lines, a set of train tracks. In that deterministic world, it's not his fault that his daughter died. And I say that because it did a flashback, another or visualization of the past, where it showed that the reason why his folks, I don't want to say reason, but basically what happened was that he was talking to his wife while his daughter and wife was in the car. They were driving back from the store or whatever, and she was like, I don't like I don't like talking on the phone while I'm driving. Can you just give me 30 seconds? I'm almost there. He's literally down the street, like he could see them down the street, coming down the street. And she was like, just give me 30 seconds. I don't like talking this on the phone. He was like, and I miss you, blah blah blah. I was talking. I just it's just 30 seconds. I'll see you. You're coming in now and stuff like that. So he's just talking, and then all of a sudden, boom, car gets smashed, like demolished, and his wife and kids die. So he's kind of throughout this whole thing, especially after you see that, you realize that he's trying to see if he's guilty for killing his family because he couldn't get off the phone for 30 seconds, right? So I was like, dang, that's messed up. And it's crazy because in a deterministic world, it wouldn't really be his fault because he has no free will. Like it was bound to happen, right? And so in that world, he wouldn't necessarily feel guilty. He would have some sense of closure. He would, he could live with himself more. And but you see that he's like a tortured soul because of this, this idea, this concept. But on the other hand, you have Lily, who believes that she has free will, who that she can choose this, that, and the other. And even when she goes to Forrest and Forrest's house, who's sleeping with Katie, by the way. So years later, when this happened, probably they didn't ever say it, but this most likely happened years before, because Katie was in college um prior to what they did back, the back, whatever. You get the point. It's not, you don't have to explain all that, but basically, we have an idea that this has happened years before. So during the series, they show it only like the last like 2 episodes, but Katie and Forrest are sleeping together, and Katie really really loves Forrest, and vice versa. Um, she said it first. She was like, well, she didn't say love. She said, I really like you, like, and stuff like that. It's cute. But so they're together, and when Lily goes to Forrest's house, um, because like his security guard, like he was going crazy, he's trying to kill him and all this other stuff. She goes to his house, and she's like, "Why are you doing this?" And Katie explains. She's like, "Because the world is deterministic." They try to explain how determinism works and all that stuff, and what they're building at DEVS. Why her boyfriend died. She's Katie's explained all this to Lily, and Lily was like, oh yeah, during that explanation, Katie said, because the world's deterministic, I really looked into the future, through our machine, and I know that I knew that you came here today. I knew what you were going to say. I knew what I was going to say. And I also know that in 21 hours, you're going to come to DEVS. You're going to come to the building, you know, um, and we're going to talk it out there. And oh, actually, what's important to say is that they can see through the future. Like the machine was able to see into the future, but it couldn't see after that date, like 21 hours in the future, not 21, but like it couldn't see past a certain event where, um, unbeknownst to Lily, but Katie and Forrest knew that Lily was going to die, you know, at this specific date, right? And the machine was not able to see anything after that. It was just static. So for months, they knew that Lily was gonna die. They knew that she was gonna go there, and something was gonna happen, or Forrest was gonna get killed, right? Lily was gonna kill Forrest, and Lily was gonna die. That was gonna be That's the last thing they knew. E- Everything after that, the machine could not predict for some reason. Like they don't know why. And so she told this to Lily. She didn't tell him that she was gonna die or that she was gonna kill Forrest. She just said, our machine can't predict past, you know, 21 hours when you come into the to DEVS, and all that stuff. So she said that, and Lily was like, "All right, I'm not gonna come." She was like, "I'm not gonna come. I'm gonna prove that you're wrong, basically, right?" So she believes wholeheartedly in free will, and that's kind of like the debate of the whole thing. Like Forrest, he could not believe in free will, because if he believes in free will, that means he killed his family, and he's guilty for that. But if he if 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 Lily does not, like, Lily cannot believe in determinism, because that means there was a reason why her boyfriend had to die, and why she suffered all this stuff, and why all this stuff happened to her, right? um and that she has like no control over her life, like she's just a robot, basically just going along the train tracks. She doesn't want to believe that. And so, like, that's when it really, like, the show really got hot for me, bro, because I believe in free will myself. Like, it just doesn't make sense that we have no choice in what happens. Like, it's no choice. It doesn't make sense for consciousness, you know, if we don't have a choice in kind of the matter of things. And granted, I do know, like, there's proof that shows that our conscious mind is not really in control of everything. Like, there's this is not from the show, but a metaphor that I've seen from another kind of story, another book, and other stuff, is like the conscious mind is like a man on an elephant, person on the elephant, right? And the elephant is your subconscious mind. It's just doing things and it reacts to the environment. It follows this path. you know um it does things very much like an animal. you know your subconscious mind is just a big, huge, ponderous thing, just doing things in reaction to the environment. So it's kind of deterministic in that standpoint. However, it is also true that your conscious mind is a separate entity from your subconscious mind. And your conscious mind, even though it doesn't necessarily control what your body is doing, it has some influence. It can kind of prod the subconscious mind, the elephant, to go a certain way. It's hard a lot of times. Like it's not easy to do it. It's like slapping the elephant in the ear 10 times before it turns that way, before it goes left or right, right? Like only thing the conscious mind can do is like slap the elephant upside the head and go this way, that way. Or maybe you want to do a less violent one. You can say, put a carrot on a stick in front of the unconscious mind, in front of the elephant, in order for it to go a certain path, right? But that's what I believe, and that's what some of the leading theories kind of shows happens with the conscious mind and unconscious mind. And to me, what I really believe is that because of that, you can create like your own environment, right? So your mind, especially the unconscious mind, reacts to the environment, but the choices that we make allows us to slowly but steadily move ourselves into an environment where we can make better choices, or we can live a better life. We can live a certain life that we want to live, right? That's what I believe. Like you can make steady and kind of small, but eventually very big um, decisions that moves you towards the type of life that you want to live, right? That whatever your imagination can set forth, whatever you really want to feel fulfilled about, whatever you can, do things like your actions, your thoughts create your beliefs, or whatever beliefs create your habits create your actions create or rather your actions create your habits, and then your habits create your life, or whatever. This is serious, but I wrote it down somewhere. But you get the point. Is that even though you might not have direct control over exactly what you're doing every single moment of the day, you still have some manner of ultimate control. Like you can prod yourselves into a certain direction. You can set up the life that you want to live by consistently and constantly pushing yourself towards that direction. That's what I believe. Um, but anyways, all that to say, in this story, I thought it was very interesting to see that it didn't actually say, "Hey, determinism is right," or "determinate," or "free will is right." And this is what really tripped me out about this show, is that in the last two episodes, they break it down where, um, or even before the last episode, like the fifth episode, it showed that, for me, it started when it showed that the deterministic principle did not work. They all stated it too. There's like, force is wrong, determinism doesn't work. They put that principle in the machine and it didn't work. Like they couldn't really predict, they couldn't really see, they couldn't visualize anything very well. But when Lyndon put in that many worlds principle, then it worked. It worked crystal clear. They could see everything. They could see a million years in the past. That saw a million years in the past, a billion years in the past, right? The Earth, a million years ago. And then, they had this whole scene where they was looking at it from 5,000 years in the past. Cave people in the cavemen, in the cave, not in the cavemen, people in the caves of France, first discovering how to write on walls for like 5,000 years. They was just watching stuff like that happen. So it was very realistic. And they also showed a portion where, the whole team was sitting there and it was like, not only can it do the past, but it can do the future. And it did 1 second in the future. And everybody was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Right. And a brief, sheet, freaking insects, so annoying. But there's this run, this is what, there's a lot of comments with that scene specifically where it was like, oh, if free will is real, that means, they should have been able to change what they were doing after seeing it 1 second in the future. But in my head, free will is real, but it's not that fast. Like your conscious, like your subconscious mind, the elephant in your brain, like it determines what you're gonna do like a whole 3 seconds before you do it. So before your conscious mind even knows what's going on, your unconscious mind already made a choice, already did something, right? So of course, 1 second in the future doesn't give you enough time to make a different decision. So that's why I think they kind of kept repeating like the same thing. Um, and throughout the whole series, especially those latter episodes when they saw the visuals crystal clear, is that even though they could predict in the future, everybody was like acting like it was fated, like they were going to do this because they saw it already. But my thing is, like, if you see the future, you can change what you're gonna do. And the whole time, nobody was doing anything different except on the last episode, and it showed when the Maya, I mean, Maya, when Lily finally, she actually came to the place, and the reason why she did come, she had full intention to stay there, but freaking the security guard Mike, or whatever his name was, came in, killed Jamie, her ex-boyfriend, who was doing everything, like he was capping for it hard, bruh. Like he was doing a lot to help protect her and be with her, during those hard times and stuff like that. He really loved her. And freaking Jamie, what's his name, came in and killed Jamie, bro. And then turns out the hobo, because I didn't say his about him, but there's a hobo who was living in front of their apartment. They're in LA, so they all those homeless people, unfortunately. But there's a hobo living in front of the apartment like throughout the whole series, and they usually talk. But in that episode, the last episode, after Jamie got killed, this hobo and the security guard was trying to kill Lily. Um, shoot, it's almost time. I gotta about to play some D&D, so gotta wrap this up. So the the security guard killed Jamie and then was gonna kill Lily, was choking her to death, right? Choking her to death, and then the hobo came out of nowhere and just choked him up, and then he was counting in Russian. And she was like, "Oh snap! So you a double agent too? You a Russian spy too?" He was like, "Yeah, my mission was to protect, your boyfriend, but I couldn't do that. So my new mission was to watch you. It wasn't to protect you; it was just to watch you. But now I messed up. I protected you, and I can't explain this. So I'm gonna go." But anyways, so her whole life was turned upside down again. Jamie dead. The hobo was a freaking double agent and or Russian spy, and so she's just like pissed. She's just like, what's the hell? What's the point? And she was like, you know what? Fine. She took the gun that oh, that's his name, Kenton. It's not Mike. It's Kenton. His name is Kenton. The security guard dude. His name was Kenton. But yeah, she took his gun. She took Kenton's gun. She was like, you know what? I guess she never said it again, but context. She was probably gonna kill Forrest and Katie. She was like, fuck y'all, man. F y'all fools, man. I'm about to kill y'all. But she took that gun, went to the place, and then Forrest, when he saw her come in, he was like, sit down. I know what you're gonna do. Let me show you. Or rather, she was like, you know what? I don't believe you. Show me the future. And so he showed her. He showed her the future. He showed her that they're gonna walk out that visualization room. They're gonna shoot. They're gonna look at Katie. Katie gonna be like, why are you doing this? And Forrest and Lily gonna walk into a little elevator thing. It's not an elevator, but it's like a box. Like the whole thing. By the way, devs exist in like a building that, and in a smaller building. It's so weird. Like it's on an electromagnetic kind of hovering thing in the middle of a room. So it's not touching anything, and around that is pure vacuum. Like there's no air, is just vacuum, and it's the only way in or out is through this little glass box. So it goes from one end to another on through electromagnetics. And so yeah, they showed in the future they're gonna walk in there. She's gonna shoot him. Lily's gonna shoot Forrest, and is gonna pierce through the glass and kill her too. She's gonna suffocate. Um, that's the future they predicted, right? And she was like, "Oh damn!" So she went out, did this thing. They was walking, and they walked into the thing. As soon as they closed the door, they was about to close the door. She threw the gun out. She's like, "Boom!" She changed the future that they thought they predicted. She changed the future. She made a different choice than the thought that she predicted. So the whole series, the whole time, everybody was watching the future and acting like it was the exact same thing that's gonna happen every time. And she went and changed it. And Forrest was like, "What? No, no, you shouldn't be able to do this." But the whole time, the other dev who was sitting out there the whole time, his name is Stuart. he messed them up. He shut off the electromagnetic field, and the little box, the glass box, fell. They both died. They both suffocated in the vacuum. So it killed because it's saying the show is kind of saying that determinism may not be real. Like, you may have a choice, but there might be other choices in which a certain conclusion is still bound to happen, you know. Um, and so that was like crazy. But then the craziest part after that is when they both died there, but Katie uploads their consciousness, or their perceived consciousness, into the simulation of the machine. So now Katie wakes up, or like she's just watching. All of a sudden, she remembers everything that happened in the past reality, in reality where she died, right? And so now she's wondering, is like, was that all a dream? Like, she doesn't know for sure. Like, it's like one of those dreams where you wake up and like you felt like you had a realistic dream, but now you're in the, like, what seems like the real world. And she's wondering, like, whoa, what the hell happened? And Forrest is there too. So she sees Forrest. Oh, and by the way, since she's now in this new reality, she tries to see, this dude's phone, like her boyfriend who was a Russian spy. But he, doesn't let her see it. So she finds Forrest, and she talks to Forrest, and Forrest is like, and Forrest, he's just playing. She goes to the field where the DEVS building was, where the quantum computer was, and there was nothing there. It's just a field, and Forrest is there playing with his kids. I mean, with his kid, with his Maya and his wife. So he's playing there with them, and Forrest goes up to talk to Lily, and he has this little monologue where he's talking about, um, we now exist in our own reality. We now exist in paradise. There's a number of realities that exist where everything happened, where bad things happen, where some of these are like really bad examples of reality, where your boyfriend died and this, that, and the other. But in this reality where you and I are talking right now, this is paradise, right? It's like he's explaining to her. And so at the end of the episode, she goes to she doesn't go back to her boyfriend, she goes back to her ex-boyfriend. And Katie, back in the reality, the base reality, that she's watching the simulation happen, and she is talking to she's talking to a senator. She was introduced. The senator was introduced early in the episode, but she's basically saying, I need you to help because we want to keep. I need your help to keep this running. And so, a couple things happen. A couple things go across my mind. Is that one? What they did here is created a simulation of an alternate reality, of multiple alternate realities. In my head, the quantum computer does not necessarily know everything that's going to happen with reality. It can't like know all the causes and determine what the predeterministic, what the deterministic world is gonna. It's not gonna really predict the future. In my head, what it's doing is simulating, based on their current reality, is simulating alternate versions of that reality. And in the many worlds theory, in Everett's many worlds theory, he even says that he says, let me get his exact words. He says, from the viewpoint of the theory, all elements of a superposition, all branches are actual. None are any more real than the rest. So in many worlds theory, when there's another reality that branches off from the choice you made, that reality is just as real as this one. And so the fact that they made a simulation that simulates other realities, that simulation and all those simulated realities are also real, right? Or actual. They're just as real as the current as a reality that made that computer simulation. So this goes into so many things. This goes into the simulation hypothesis. This goes into what reality is. It also goes into what determinism really means and what free will really means. And so from my standpoint, the show does a clever way of saying, hey, not any one of these theories are correct, but they all are correct. Like, they're not wrong, but they're not right. Like, it's just crazy because in my head, like Forrest is happy. This is his paradise, right? And throughout the whole show, it also does different scenes where he said, I don't wanna show a different Amaya. I don't want a Amaya from different reality. I wanna get the real Amaya, right? Where every lock of her hair is just the same as I remember, right? And so he's very stuck on this idea of not only that the world is deterministic and thus he had no choice in the matter, like it's not really his fault, but he also is stuck in the idea that whatever they do with the quantum computer, it has to allow him to be with his real daughter. Like he's basically trying to revive, his real daughter. Um, and in the end of the show, he's super happy, right? And my theory is that for one, he exists, he believes that even though there's multiple worlds, like, and the many worlds is technically different than determinism, like many worlds technically disproved his deterministic standpoint. He believes that the many worlds proves that determinism is also real. That because there are many worlds, that means everything can happen, right? So that means he simply exists in a state where, in the past reality where something bad happened to his daughter and all that, and now he exists in a state where something good has happened. And he has his daughter, and it's super trippy. It's super trippy because, and I didn't realize this until somebody else said in the comment, but his daughter is the same age as when she died. Like, who knows how long in the past that was? It could have been. Some people say it's 15 years ago. You know, but regardless of how long it wasn't like a matter of months. No, it was literally years. It had to be years since she died. And this new reality that he's living in, she's the same age. And so clearly something is not like stacking up here. And not only is it like not only is like he went into, it's not that he went back into that past at that specific age, but like that reality, that scene that I was telling you about where Forrest and Amaya and Lily are talking, it's the same one where his company exists. Like, his company is called Amaya. It has a big statue of Amaya as she was a kid. And that company didn't come into existence until after Amaya died. All right. So years after she died. So clearly there's something strange going on here. My theory is that Katie created a version of Forrest and maybe even of Lily where he doesn't remember certain things. Like, she can kind of pick and choose what he's remembering or what he's thinking. Maybe he's like, because he's technically now a digital version of himself. Like, his consciousness is being simulated as well within that quantum machine. And I say his consciousness because he's somehow remembering the past reality. Like, in the many worlds theory, you wouldn't know the other realities that exist. There is no way for you to, like, if you die, well, I can't say that for sure. Like, there's no way to prove or disprove that. So I can't say it for sure. But the interpretation doesn't necessarily show what happens after you die. It doesn't show, like, if your consciousness that you remember your past life. But the fact that now, like, I don't remember my past life. Like, I don't remember any sort of other realities that may have existed or not. Um, so, and I imagine you don't either. Like, most of us don't. Maybe some of us think we do, but you can't really prove or disprove whether or not we have existed in other realities before. Like, if lightning strikes and I die right now, and would I have the consciousness of, would I suddenly become aware of a past reality where I died by a lightning strike right now? Like, um, so in this simulation, you have to ask, how is his daughter the same age? How is he remembering all these things? And the only way you can kind of say that is that his consciousness from when he died was somehow uploaded into this computer along with Lily. And so he has a subjective train of consciousness that allows him to, oh shit, I'm super late. God, actually, let me see. I've been talking for like how long now? This is so, I'm sorry. It's just so interesting to me, man. It's like, let me see what my group is doing. I should pause this video. Um, okay, I got more time. So yeah, so you have to ask, what's going on with this simulation? You have to ask, how is this subjective train of consciousness existing in these alternate realities, right? And for me, that means that there's both, like, it's open to interpretation. Because for Lily, the fact that she changed her, like, she didn't go back with Sergey, she didn't go back with her boyfriend that died, she didn't follow the same reality that existed before. She went and, she went and gave Jamie a hug, and this reality. And so you have to ask, like, is there free will or no? Like, is it deterministic or no? In my head, it is a form of free will, but it is one which is more nuanced, and which shows that reality is so strange that everything that can happen is happening, has happened, will happen, but it's existing in different kind of different. Oh god, I thought it was itchy. It's pollen out here or something. But all these realities coexist together, right? And so when we make a choice, there's another reality where we made a different choice. So it's trippy for me. It's just trippy. So that's what got me like crazy about this show. Um, and this, I didn't even want to like recap the whole show. I wanted to talk about like the design of the quantum computer. Like, there's not much like of it, but there's this one scene or a couple scenes where they show this little tablet that kind of controls it, and I wanted to talk about that. But it's just super interesting to think about, but I'm going to show it nonetheless. So here you can see this is the tablet they use to control the quantum computer. Like that, the visualization, it projects a visualization of what you're seeing and somehow they use this tablet to show, to like pick a date and time to see, to watch, and to do things. And it doesn't make sense. Like, what the hell is this interface even saying? Nonetheless, even though this doesn't like, it's not great design, I think it proves my theory that this is more of a many worlds theory. That's not a deterministic thing. It's more about the interpretation, like the seeing multiple realities, like this right here. Because I was wondering, how do they find those different realities, and how do they find, because you have to think about it, like, if this computer is simulating alternate realities, right? There's some realities where the world is drastically different, but there's also many realities where it's very similar. And throughout the whole show, they have, or not the whole, but like especially later on when they figure out, when they put the many worlds principle in there, they show, like, it's weird. They have one scene where you're sitting in a room and different versions of people, of that same person, or a couple or something like that, is doing different things. So the first time they show it is Lily is in a room with what's the name, with Sergey, but in that same room there's another version of Lily with Jamie, and then there's another Jamie there, and there's another Sergey there, and they're all like different things in the same room. And so you're like wondering, like, what the hell's happening here? But my theory is that this device here, it shows you the probability of a certain reality existing, right? And so you can see, like, here with these larger lines, that these are higher probabilities and these are lower probabilities. And so
Same thing for up here. Maybe this is like a higher probability. You know, I'm not sure what this is, but I don't know. But it's interesting design nonetheless. If I were designing it, I would probably I like how Steins Gate did it. Steins Gate is an anime. It's more about time travel, but it has this part about world lines where it's showing like, this is like a train of events, and there's a whole bunch of different world lines. There's a whole bunch of different train of events that show, how something can happen. And so I would do a design that's a little bit closer to that, where it shows you like kind of like a timeline when you visualize this timeline with this like a vent line, stuff like that. But you'll see like branches coming out. So I would do something closer to that. Uh, just to have like a cool thing. I mean, you can also do like a search thing feature, put some tags in there. But I think this style was something interesting. But overall, man, this series is super interesting. There's always more to talk about, always more to think about. I would love to discuss it. So please comment below. Let me know what you're thinking if you've seen this before, or if I'm making sense if you haven't seen this before. Um, it's so trippy. There's other like theories. Like some people were saying, were noticed that the whole series, the cinematography is very good. It's beautiful, but it's almost always like in a dream state where like it's kind of muted, soft tones and stuff like that, and the edges of the screen are like a little like faded out, and so you wonder if the entire series is even in reality or if it's in like some simulation or something like that. And so that gets me thinking like maybe like this whole process was just a simulation. um and when I think about that concept and what Everett said, you have to say like, when we say just a simulation, what does that mean? That doesn't even mean anything. Like in reality, like if this was true, then every simulation would be just as real as any other type of reality. So you can't say it's just a simulation. You can't say one is real. Like a lot of comments, which annoys me, is saying, "Oh, these simulations are full of soulless people. These people don't have any soul." Like this show doesn't even get into it. Never says the word soul in there or what is who has a soul or not. But I just saw that like those type of comments is kind of reductive, and it doesn't even it doesn't get into the meat of what this show is about. You know, the 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 point of the show is saying that every reality is technically just as real as this one. Like a simulation, if you can build a simulation that's realistic, that's as realistic as this one, it's real. It's just as real. It's a new reality. And so Stewart, one of the reasons why I think he killed them, is because, and some people thought that was like bad for his character, that he was like being illogical and stuff like that, but that was his character. Like throughout the show, he was always one of the more emotional ones. Like he would call his computer baby, or he would call his algorithms, his programs baby, stuff like that. He would always wax poetic about certain things. He would quote Shakespeare and all these other people. And like in the last show, he's monologuing. He has this whole thing where he's saying he see Forrest coming, and he has this quote about, it's a really good quote. I should probably look it up, but let me see if I could look it up. uh can't spell. But he has this quote, and he's saying, "Do you know who that is? Can you guess who that is?" He's saying to Forrest, "Can you guess who that is?" And Forrest is like, "No." He doesn't even try to guess. And Stewart's like, "You can't even try. Can't even try to guess." And he just has this whole look at him. He's just like, "The fate of our world, like like you're trying to be God, but what he say?" Like, he has a lot of like these quips like this. Like one quip, he's like, we're trying to be God, but I don't believe that we can be God. Or he has another one where he's like, and this one he's saying, what he said, you're trying to control the future, but you don't even know the past. Like our future is in the hands of somebody who doesn't know the past, or something like that, or doesn't know our own history. But oh yeah, he has this poem here. He has a really nice voice too. Should probably show it here, but whatever. Like they have a lot of similar visualizations like this. Like these halos, they have halos around the trees, and during certain scenes, like um he would they would have him like with the halo under him or above him, and then only two people is just him with this kind of cinematography and Lily. Like they're the only two people who have the halo around them, and so you get this kind of concept. Oh, another thing I completely forgot to mention is that DEUS. I mean, I just said it, but DEVS. He said the V is Latin, so it's a U. So it's Deus, Deus, like Deus ex machina. Um, and the director of the show is also the director of Ex Machina, the AI movie with the robot. That's crazy. So this whole thing, you get this idea that they really are trying to play God, or like they're creating some type of God, and you especially get that feeling in the end, because this will also trip me out. Like this, I told you so many things to like talk about, but in the end, you get this feeling that the machine is God, right? This quantum computer is basically God, because it created an entire reality where in that reality everybody believes that they're real, and they are, because like Everett said, any alternate reality is just as real as the other reality. So you get this feeling that this machine is God, like is a form of an almighty being that created life and all that in it and all that is within, stuff like that, And it's crazy because, like I said before, Katie has to keep it on, and so Katie is like, maybe she is God, because if she doesn't keep this simulation running, then maybe that means Forrest and Lily dies, and all those people in that reality die. They cease to exist. And so you get this concept that, like, wow, like, dang, that's crazy, man. And a lot of comments, another opinion I don't like from other people is, a lot of comments are saying, oh, this machine, it doesn't like, this machine is linking you to another reality, like this base reality and adjacent to base reality or other realities, and the machine is not simulating other realities, but or maybe it's creating whole new realities. And if the machine dies, it doesn't matter, because those realities like are now existing independent of the machine. And I don't think that makes sense. That's not really consistent with the show at all, because if that was true, then you wouldn't have to keep the machine on, and it would be like, I don't think that makes sense. But it's crazy because, yeah, now you have this machine that's simulating a reality, and um yeah, that's still not ready. So yeah, you have a machine creating this reality, and so Katie's like like a god, like she's like a gatekeeper. And so who gets into this new paradise of realities, right? So technically, if somebody dies in her reality, she can upload their consciousness into this machine, and they can live a whole new life. Like technically, she is now a god, and now this machine is itself like God or whatever, right? So that's kind of like another kind of crazy trippy idea. Um, but it's not all like, this show is really awesome, but I do think it's super problematic, because the whole idea of determinism doesn't, it's not, I think they gave it a little bit too much airtime. Like they leaned a little bit too much into the whole idea of determinism being like a valid scientific theory, because they tried to like base their simulation on it, and it was somewhat working. And then in the end episode is so um vague that you could interpret it as a deterministic thing, with Stewart kind of killing them in both timelines, with Forrest being happy and having his children there and stuff like that. You kind of get the idea that they want you to kind of think determinism might be a valid theory, and I think that's problematic. And another problem is that, that's the biggest problem with it for me throughout the whole show, is that the technology doesn't make sense, right? Like they have a lot of they have a lot of theories that is very science, very sciencey. Like, you know, quantum computer is real. Quantum computing is real. The many worlds interpretation is a very valid, you know, interpretation. Even determinism, you know, it's there to all this stuff, right? But and it's not like set in the far future. Like it's set in the here and now. Like it could happen today. It can be happening right now. It could have happened already, right? Like there's no other advanced technology beyond quantum computing. That's it. Um, but my issue with this is that how in the world did they possibly simulate a reality at all? The closest thing they get to explaining how this worked, how the computer worked, was during the scene where they had like some objects on like a table. They had a dead mouse in the middle, and they had like 6 objects around it. Um, where they had like, you know, clock, a cheese, all these different items around it, and they had this whole thing. It was like, oh, they had pointing lasers or something at them, and just like extrapolate the data, right? And then they had this phrase or something where they said, you know, uh, the data, you can extrapolate the data, and we get like with this new the many worlds theory in there, we get no errors. So meaning they can see everything. They can see all the particles within those objects. They can see all the subatomic particles within, you know, those objects. And then after that, they say extrapolate outwards. So before they extrapolate inwards, they took an object and they were able to analyze everything that was inside the object. And then they went outwards. So they extrapolated from from the dead mouse, all that stuff, everything that was outside of the object, like the room around it. And it was like extrapolate outwards some more. And Lyndon or whoever was there, they was like, really? I guess, you know, we might run out of storage, but yeah, we can do that. And so they extrapolated outwards, and they were able to see like Forrest's face, who was sitting right there in the door. Like they got the data for his face, and like maybe even beyond that, it kind of went out black after that. But that's the closest thing they ever get to explaining how the technology actually works, is saying, you know, extrapolating data is big data. You know, they get, you know, once you know everything about one atom or one particle, you can know everything about the next particles next to it, and so on and so forth. I want to know what the hell that means. Like, how does that allow you to realistically simulate an actual whole reality? Like, we don't even have technology. Our quantum computers, we have quantum computers, right? And even today, they can't even simulate like a complex molecule, like a water molecule. Like, there's so many factors that goes into determining how an actual real world molecule works, that we currently predict that it's going to take a stupid amount of quantum computing to ever simulate anything more complex, right? Like, we might be able to have a quantum computer based on cloud computing and like Google's entire server space that allows you to simulate, you know, realistic chemistry. That's it, like realistic reactions between chemical bonds. But we have no idea how much power, how much energy, how much computer processing, how much algorithms, how much stuff will go into actually simulating a real world organic being, like a real world life form. Just a one life form, much less infinite amount of life forms, you know, and all these other elements. It just doesn't make sense how they can simulate an entire reality within a quantum computer that can fit inside like a building. Like, if this show took place far in the future, and they had a Matryoshka brain, which is like a computer the size of the sun, that can use the entire energy, like the entire energy potential of the sun to power itself and to make those processing, you know, computational processes, whatever, then yeah, maybe they can simulate whatever they want. But this is talking about a quantum computer that can fit inside of a building. They don't even show where their power comes from. They don't show where the storage goes. Like, you know, that part doesn't make sense to me, and that is a huge problematic thing for me. Like, this whole show was pretty, you know, this whole show was pretty scientific, was pretty hard science fiction. But that fiction, man, it's like, oh kind of put a whole salt in the grain for me. Grain of salt in the can for me. Like it made it real hard to take it um to really take it too much more seriously. But nonetheless, besides all that, it was a really cool show, really good concepts, really got me thinking about stuff and helped me to learn more stuff about like I never knew about that Everett's theory. I heard about the many worlds theory, but I didn't really know like the fine components. Oh, excuse me, components of it. And I made like some comments and like YouTube comments about why what I thought was happening. And during those comments, like while I was writing those up, I started researching into the Everett's many worlds interpretation, and that taught me even more about it, and that really helped me kind of it taught me some stuff. So that was really cool. So yeah, this whole series was really dope. I don't know how long this video was, but as you can see, I was super excited. I'm gonna watch more. Another movie by him. He made a movie called Annihilation, which apparently explores the concept of aliens. Freaking love aliens, so we'll see how that goes. I might do more videos like this. I like this. This is real fun. Like I've been thinking about doing videos like this for. I've been reading a series called Death Worlders. I think I talked about it before, but I wanted to do like a series where I'm just talking, like reacting to the stuff I read and watch. So I might do more of this. Let me know if you like this too. Um, got bit stupid fries. I need to go inside. But yeah, it was cool. Let me know what you think about everything, about this show, about this talking about stuff like this, about these theories and all that. And have a good day. See ya. Bye bye.